All right. Janice Oberding is practically a Nevada native, having lived here in the Silver State over 60 years. In 2000, she left a career in gaming and began pursuing writing. She is the author of more than 40 books, both fiction and nonfiction. Her books range from short fiction stories, murder mysteries, the paranormal, true crime, and history. She is a paranormal researcher and history buff, particularly in Nevada and the West, and was instrumental in the creation of Truckee Meadows Community College's Paranormal Series, which is still active today. At TMCC, she has taught non-credit classes in book publishing, foreign film, and ghost hunting 101, for which she was awarded the Non-Credit Instructor of the Year award. Janice investigates ghosts and hauntings throughout Nevada and across the U.S. As a historian paranormal expert, Janice has appeared in numerous television shows such as Ghost Adventures, Dead Famous, and Ghost Hunters. Please welcome Janice Oberding.
Thank you. I'm going to take this off. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, first, this talk is Nevada's famous and infamous ghosts and where they haunt. But I wanted to say a few things about ghosts before I started. And one of them is ghosts are with us 365 days a year. But it seems there's a special interest or maybe a renewed interest in Halloween. I enjoy ghosts 365 days a year because I am a historian and I truly believe when I'm investigating or researching ghosts, I learn more about history. I can actually be in history, I feel, when I research ghosts. And another thing is, actually, you ask people, what is a ghost? And a lot of people, everybody may have a different answer. I say, for my purpose, they're dead people. Now, tonight, two of our categories are ghosts who were famous in life, and that fame continues in life. That would be in death, That would be like movie stars, singers, entertainers, that type of thing. And then we have people, ghosts who became famous as ghosts in death. And one of those we'll cover tonight is Julia Billette, who was a prostitute in Virginia City. Now our first ghost, there's two of them, and I'm going to just very briefly with each of these from the 50s and 60s and 70s, I'll give so if somebody doesn't remember or doesn't know who they were, I'll briefly explain, because when I wrote my first book on Las Vegas ghost, I wrote something about Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, and the editor, went through the book and came back and said, well, you have to explain who Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz are. I said, okay. So briefly, Frank Sinatra was the old Blue Eyes. He was a famous singer from the 40s up to the 80s. And he was also an actor. I believe he won an award or was nominated for Academy Award in From Here to Eternity. And he had a friend, Marilyn Monroe, who was the blonde bombshell of that era. And she was, I would say she's a better actress than I think she gets credit for. I loved her in Niagara. I mean, I know she was a bad person in Niagara, but I think that was one of her really good roles. And they did have for friendship. And when Marilyn was in Reno in 1960 making her last film, The Misfits, she went up and spent a lot of time with Frank Sinatra, who owned the Cal Neva at Lake Tahoe. Now, this is one thing you'll see a common thread in a few of these stories is, why would a ghost choose to haunt a place? Why would they want to be here and not over there or something? Well, I always say, if you get displaced out of your home or a favorite spot in life through no fault of your own, and that you can't do anything about it, well, you may come back as a ghost and haunt that place, because now you're a ghost. Now let's see them get rid of you. And I know there's a theory, and like I said, mostly all of ghost information, what we have on ghosts, it's all theory. I mean, everybody has their idea. Well, it's this way, it's that way. There's no actual facts. I mean, here's a fact. In every language on earth, there's a word for ghost. So that shows they're universal. Beyond that, I don't think there are facts, except for, like I said earlier, ghosts are dead people. So Frank and Marilyn spent a lot of time up at the Cal Neva. And I'll get another picture. I think I'll forward this one. This is the Cal Neva as it looked when Frank Sinatra owned it. I believe he bought it in the very early 1960s. And he had his Rat Pack friends. Everybody know what the Rat Pack? Okay, his Rat Pack friends came up and hung out with him. And Marilyn came up and they partied. And he had some pretty big names in here. And he was enjoying it. And casino owner, and everybody wanted him. And this is the showroom. Now, Bill and I were fortunate enough, in early 2000, we were able to go in here and visit this showroom. I actually did a couple of TV shows on ghosts for Great Britain here in this showroom. We did a seance, and it's pretty amazing. It was pretty amazing. I understand that it probably doesn't look this way now, that they wanted this building, they wanted the Cal Neva for a long time. They wanted to build some high-rise up there. But environmentalists said, no, we don't want that here in this area. So this is, my understanding is it's been through a lot of owners since Frank Sinatra, and one of them probably decided, if I start demolishing the place and just leave it a wreck, what are they going to do? They're going to let me tear it down. So I understand that's pretty well what they've done. Now, I was able to talk to a woman who managed this, and they talked about Frank this and Frank that. And Frank, they brought Frank's piano from Hawaii in here. And when they did, well, the ghostly Frank started kicking up and being a nuisance to people, especially to women. He'd yank their skirts, go blow on their shoulder gently. But the worst thing he did is, there was a guy who was new employee there. He was a cook, and they still had on the building Mr. Sinatra's parking space. Well, this guy decides, I'm in a hurry, nobody's parked there, I'm going to. Well, he was haunted by, according to him, the ghost of Frank Sinatra that night, all the way home. He decided he wasn't going to take Mr. Sinatra's place anymore. Now, this is the swimming pool that Marilyn's goes to, if you watched Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack. There was a couple of witnesses on here who had seen Marilyn swimming across. You know, that line there is the state line. You could swim from Nevada to California and back again. And her ghost was seen there a lot. And this is her cabin, and you think she was the blonde bombshell. She was having an affair, probably, I think she was, with one or the other Kennedy brothers, JFK, RFK. Rumor has it that both of them, at different times, of course, visited her at the cabin here. Now, Bill and I were fortunate enough, we actually got to go to the cabin and do some EVP, which is electronic voice phenomena, where you have a recorder and you speak to the dead, and supposedly the dead speak back to you. And we asked a couple of questions, and we got a breathy voice that said, yes, Was it Maryland? I like to think it was, but maybe it wasn't. But the cabin is not much bigger than this area right in through here. And you think, man, she was the blonde bombshell. She was dating a president and an attorney general. And the cabin is a little bitty thing. You would think it would have been fabulous, but it was, I guess it was rustic, beyond rustic. So Frank Sinatra's owning the Cal Neva. Marilyn's appearing down in Reno where she's filming The Misfits, and they're partying up here. And that's pretty cool. Now, one rumor has that Marilyn overdosed while staying in this cabin. They sneaked her through one of the tunnels because there were underground tunnels where a visitor from that cabin could sneak over here to this other cabin. And supposedly they revived her, or barely revived her, and took her back to Los Angeles where she died a couple of weeks later. And I've talked to people, history, or if you see witnesses to a crime or witness to anything, everybody's going to see it differently. I've talked to people who say she was dead when they took her out of there. Others say, no, she wasn't. She was completely revived. Either way, she was dead within 2 weeks. And some people believe the Kennedys had something to do with that now. So Marilyn's up here. Frank Sinatra's owning this, and he's partying. The problem is, Frank Sinatra had a group called the McGuire Sisters. Everybody remember the cute McGuire Sisters and Sugar, was it Sugar Time? Oh yeah, and they had the cutest dresses, and they were really cool singers. But one of them was dating a mobster, Sam Giancana. And we have in Nevada what we call the Black Book, where mobsters aren't allowed in our casinos. If your name's in that Black Book, you're not supposed to be in our casinos. But here was Sam Giancana sitting up behind the stage in a little alcove with all his bodyguards watching his lady love singing. Okay, well, the FBI noticed this because they were watching Sam Giancana, and they notified the Gaming Commission and told them, you have a problem here. You have a known mobster, his name's in the Black Book. You have him partying it up at the Cal Neva. Okay, they notified Frank Sinatra. Well, I'll always believe if Frank Sinatra had have been kinder and nicer, it might have turned out better for him. But he started cussing the man on the phone. He was do you know I'm Frank Sinatra and blah, 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 blah. And what happened is they snatched his gaming license away and he lost his casino. And I believe he really loved the Cal Neva so much that that's why he's there. I mean, in life, they could kick him out of there. You can't operate a gaming casino without a license. So he's still up there as far as I know. We've done a few investigations since they started rearranging everything. Now I don't think they allow anybody up there. But it's an interesting part of our Nevada history. Now this is another one, and Maryland, and I've had people say, I don't believe ghosts because, you have this ghost here and you have this ghost there. Well, come on now. If there really are ghosts and they've able to come back after they're dead, you mean to tell me they can't be in two places at once? And this is one of Marilyn's hangouts, and this is no longer there. This is the Mapes Hotel Casino, where she partied and everything, and her, filming The Misfits, and her ghost has been seen. Now, this is all demolished. I'm sure you guys all know there's a part, I don't really want to call it a part, but I guess a skating rink. I mean, the kids go down with their skateboards and skate, and the homeless like to sleep down there. But she's been seen there a time or two. Now here's another story following that same format of, you can kick me out when I'm alive, but you can't do it when I'm dead. And this is Eiley Bowers. She was one of the first Comstock millionairesses, and I say she was a lady well ahead of her time. She married when she was very young. She was born and raised in Scotland. I think she was 15, 16. She married her husband, and they converted to Mormonism, and they moved to Utah. Well, when he decided he would have another wife, she decided, no, and I'm going to divorce you. And she did, and that, we're talking mid-1850s. That was very unheard of. And she quickly married another man, Mr. Cohen, and at that time, this was the Utah Territory, and they were sent to Washoe Valley area, Carson City, to live there and colonize that more or less. And she was quite happy. She was doing miner's laundry and earning a little living. They had a small farm there, and it was beautiful. Every time I go to Bowers Mansion, has everybody been to Bowers Mansion? Yeah, you can almost imagine how pretty it was, before a freeway and all that. So Mr. Cohen gets word from Utah. They're expecting they may go to war with the United States. And Brigham Young, the leader, was calling all the faithful home. So Mr. and Mrs. Cohen, you're supposed to pack up and come back to Utah. And Mr. Cohen dutifully did that. The problem was, Eiley said, I'm not going, I like it here. And Mr. Cohen said, well, you do realize that'll mean we're going to get a divorce? Yeah, she realized it. See you later. So there she was, a young divorcee. She moves up to Gold Hill, outside what they call Gold Hill Canyon, and she opens a small, very rustic boarding house. And she's doing miners' laundry and charging them a small rent. And along comes a very, very handsome miner named Sandy Bowers. And the legend is, and I believe there's a lot of truth to this, there was a month when he couldn't pay the rent. He said, Eiley, I just don't have the money. She said, well, how about if you give me some of that, your mining claim? You're okay. So he did that. Within a month or two, they struck it rich, and they were married, and they were the first Comstock millionaires. And they had a wonderful life. They went to Europe. He made the remark, I have money to throw at the birds. And I'm sure that Europe was probably impressed with them, but not, she wanted to go visit Queen Victoria, and Queen Victoria wasn't interested in seeing her at all. Number one, she was a divorced woman. And number two, she was nouveau riche. I mean, she hadn't been born to wealth. And so she wasn't welcomed into Buckingham Palace. That didn't matter. She came back, and they built Bowers Mansion. And they hadn't lived there very long when Sandy was up in Virginia City and came down with miner's disease or pneumonia or something and died. So here she is. And we're talking 1860-ish. And it's not like today. She couldn't just go out and say, I want to work here, I want to work there. So she started to do what she had learned in Scotland. She started telling fortunes. But that still wasn't enough money to pay the bills. Apparently Sandy was not good financially. He had loaned money to all his friends, and she was heavily in debt. So she ended up losing her mansion to Myron Lake, who owned a lake mansion, Lakes Crossing, Reno's original. Yeah, she lost it to him. Okay, she went about the rest of her life, scratching along, telling fortunes, that type of thing. When she died, well, there's been stories of her haunting this house, this mansion, for over 100 years now. Before the freeway came there, motorists late at night would say they would see a green, like a glowing woman walking across this area, and I think that was her. And I think it's the same as Frank Sinatra. You can put me out when I'm alive, but you can't do it when I'm dead. And now, I have a friend who is the curator of this mansion, who's written a book on this mansion and on Eiley, and a wonderful book, and she does wonderful talks on that. And she disagrees totally. She doesn't believe it's haunted. She believes all ghosts is stuff and nonsense, but, it's up to the individual. Now, another, following that same line, we're going to go to Las Vegas here, is Red Fox. And that was his home on Eastern Avenue. And we look at it today, and I've seen it, the past 20 years, I've seen it when it looks like, I can't believe a movie star would live, or movie star, TV star, comedian, stand-up comedian. I can't believe this. He wouldn't have something more elaborate and fancy, but that's it. And he loved his house. He also was a big Keno player, and I say that because a lot of people claim they've seen him around Keno games, his ghost around Keno games and stuff. I have a friend who lives in Las Vegas who went to his grave, and again, he tried to collect EVP recording. He put the recorder down on the grave and asked, could you give me some good Keno numbers? Could you? And he got the reply, you're stupid. So anyway, we'll get back to Red. Red owed the IRS money. When he died unexpectedly of a heart attack, and the IRS had been dunning him. They wanted their money. You can owe everybody in the world except the IRS because they're going to collect. Okay, they were in the process of kicking him out of his house when he died unexpectedly. Well, a big fan of his, and lived in Las Vegas, big fan of Red Fox, bought the house. Think of somebody you idolize, and you're buying their house and you're living in their house, and how cool is that? Man, he really thought he had hit a jackpot until he started seeing Red Fox's ghost all throughout the house, night after night. And in the pool back here, swimming pool, he'd hear Red and one of his wives arguing and fighting night after night. Yeah. So I believe he was on Unsolved Mystery, one of those shows. He sold that house. The next people moved in, and they sold it. And they kept selling it because here's the ghostly Red Fox walking through the house in his swimming trunks. Think about that. They sold it. Well, about 10 years ago, a real estate company bought this house, and what they did is they cleaned it up pretty well. It's their office is what it is. And they put a little Red Fox out on the mailbox. And they claim that they haven't had any more hauntings because of that. But oftentimes people will say, I haven't seen a ghost. You just don't know, have they or not? But that's another story of putting somebody out of their house. Now, I'm going to tell you about Liberace. Everybody know Liberace? Looking, anybody? Yeah, very famous in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Pianist, very flamboyant, very well paid Las Vegas entertainer. And that's my mom about 20 years ago, and I'm happy to say she's not a ghost. She's still with us. But he had a house on Shirley Avenue in Las Vegas when he died. And if you were to look at that house from the outside, you would think, oh, that's a lower middle class neighborhood. I mean, just looks like a regular house. But what he had done is it's a regular middle class or lower middle class neighborhood. What he had done is he bought 2 houses and had them converted to one house. And as you'll see, I've got a few that will see how fabulously he decorated it. Well, I was visiting my mom in Las Vegas about 20 years ago, and I said, oh my gosh, I want to go to Red Fox. I've got Red Fox on the brain. I want to go to Liberace's house. My mom said, well, it's over on Shirley Avenue, but I don't think you're going to get in. So I call over there, and the guy no. I said, but I'm writing a book. No. Well, my mom gets on there and sweet talks him, and he says, yeah, you can come. So my mom drives us over there, and she says, if Liberace's ghost appears to me, I am driving away and you are walking home. Okay. So there's my mom in his living room. And here's another shot of his living room. You can see it's pretty fabulous. But I mean, it was just, to me, it was amazing to be in Liberace's house. And I'm going all through there taking pictures. There's the living room. Here's another section. It's mirrors and glass, just what you would expect of Liberace. And there's the bathtub, and that's the ceiling. And he had a man who had helped restore the Sistine Chapel ceiling come and paint all over his ceiling angels and things like that. And there he is, a picture of him taking his bath. There's his bathtub, and there's me way back in the back. You can see I had brown hair then, and I have an old camera. But you can see I'm going all through there, and I'm just really enjoying the fact that I'm in this house. Okay, well, we'll go back, because we can get back. So I'm wondering, where's Mama? What happened? Where is she? I start walking, looking for her, where's she at? And she's standing in the foyer, and she's doing this, kind of walk. I say, what is wrong? She said, I looked, blue water was coming down from the ceiling, and these were like marble floors. And I didn't want to slip on that wet marble, so I'm walking very carefully, trying to avoid it. And then she said, then I looked up. And I said, okay, well, what'd you see? She said, Liberace, there's a painting of him on the ceiling done in shades of blue. So there was no water. What I think happened is he wanted to let my mom, because my mom was a very big fan of his. I remember watching him on TV in the 50s. My mom would not miss his show and going to see him in the casinos later. I think he wanted to let my mom know, I'm here. I'm not going to scare you, but I am here. And he wanted to make sure I didn't have to walk home that day too. So now here is one post-mortem fame. Does everybody know who Julia Bellette was? Oh my goodness, okay, I get to tell a story. Julia Bellette is a big folk hero here in Virginia City, because she was a prostitute who was murdered in her bed in 1867. And that's her claim to fame. Okay, well, in Virginia City, if you want to start an argument, just say, I think Julia Bellette was not rich. I think Julia Bellette, there's no pictures. Anything like that, you're going to have a big argument. But I'll tell you honestly, I don't think that's really a picture of her. And I've had many historians say, oh yes, it is. Well, I don't think so. I have my own reasons. There's a bar there that has another photo they claim is her, a painting photo, and I believe that might be closer to her. But regardless, she was murdered in her bed in 1867. Now, before I move on with her story, I'll show you, this is a statue, Julia Bellette. There's a restaurant there called Canvas Cafe. And the little gal who owns it had a dead tree out there and started thinking, what can I do? What can I do with that dead tree? Oh, I know. I'll have some artist come and carve it. And that's what he did. She had one of the artists, I don't know the name, where they take their chainsaw and they carve, and that's what he did with her dead tree out there. Pretty good. And so Virginia City has a statue to Julia Bellette. Now, it didn't take but a few months before they apprehended and arrested John Millian for her murder. And this is a if you're curious and want to see, this is at the Capitol down in Carson City. They have a fragment about this long of the rope they used to hang in, because it was a legal hanging. The problem is this man barely spoke English. He didn't speak English, he was French. And he claimed, right after the time he died, by the time he was hanged, that all he did, he was the lookout. He did not know that two men were in there killing her. And many years later, two men did confess that they actually were the murderer. But his case went to the Nevada Supreme Court I think 2 times, and both times the same. He got the death penalty, so he was hanged. But there's a debate with historians of, whether or not did he actually do the killing. So he has achieved fame after death, because he probably was an innocent man. And he haunts an area just outside of Virginia City near the cemetery where he was hanged, while Julia Bellette haunts an area of further on the south side on Flowery Hill where she's buried. She haunts a bar up there. Now these are stories. She haunts the boardwalk up there. She gets around a lot. So, and both of them in life, they were not that famous, but they've achieved a fame as ghosts because what happened, how they ended up dead. But that is something, if you really want to get a debate going, start arguing with the historian about, well, what about John Millian? Was he really guilty? We did a play in Virginia City a few years ago on this very thing, and we asked the audience after the play, okay, was he guilty? Well, he should have had that audience on his jury, because they all said no, he wasn't guilty. But he didn't. And so now, Mark Twain. John Millian was hanged April 24th, 1868. Well, it just so happens that Mark Twain was in town. Now, Mark Twain had been in Virginia City early on and left. He ran out of towns because he challenged somebody to a duel, and there had just been a law passed that dueling was against the law. So he was in town. He had come back from the Sandwich Islands, what we know today as Hawaii, and he was going to speak at the Opera House that night. But he was also a reporter for a Chicago Tribune. I think he wrote articles for them. And there's going to be a hanging. Of course you're going to report on it. And he did. He went out there and watched the hanging of John Millian, and he reported every gruesome detail of what the guy looked like when he was hanged, what he said, and all of that was in French, so I don't know how he knew everything he said, but it's very interesting. They put the whole thing in the newspaper. It's interesting if you're a fan of Mark Twain's to see he reported on a legal execution, and some say he changed his opinion of hanging and the death penalty over this case. Now, young Mark Twain also supposedly haunts Virginia City. There's been a couple of people step out of a saloon after partaking of too much drink, and it's claimed to have encountered him on the boardwalk up there. And then we have famous after death, Elizabeth and Josiah Potts. And their story's kind of I think it's a fun story because a ghost is the reason these two got executed. Now there's it's not like today, everything people do is on tape or on the news. There's always some camera. Oh, smile, you're on a camera. Here, smile, you're on a camera. There are always cameras looking at us here or there. When you're driving now, you better not run through a yellow light or a red light or something. There's a camera up there. They'll send you a ticket. Bill knows. So, anyway, Elizabeth and Josiah Potts. The story she claimed is she murdered a man called Mr. Fawcett because he was molesting her 5-year-old daughter. The story Mr. Fawcett's friends say that's not true. She murdered him because he was her first husband, and he could have proved she was a bigamist. Either way, poor Mr. Fawcett's dead in her basement. Okay? So she gets her husband, Josiah, to go down into the basement and destroy the body. So he takes his axe and he destroys, he burns, he does what he can. Okay, and they're going to leave now. They, try and cover the body in the basement, and they're moving on. They're leaving Elko. They're leaving Carla and Elko, and they're moving on. And a newspaper woman, she had a column called The Busy Bee. She moved into the house, and she's writing because she didn't believe in ghosts. And she's, oh, there's a ghost in here, and he's tapping on my headboard, and he's shaking the bed. And oh, it's so exciting to live in a haunted house. And that happened for about a week. She thought it was exciting. Then she decided it wasn't so exciting. What is going on? So she sent her husband down into the basement to find out. And he found what he thought were the remains of a body. Sheriff came in, sure enough, they start digging, doing investigations, and it was Mr. Fawcett's remains. Well, they found these two, and they confessed, they killed him, but they had a reason. And I believe their case went to the Supreme Court too, or maybe just, and here's a funny thing. We always say equal rights for women and men. The townspeople wanted him acquitted. They didn't want to hang him, but they sure wanted to hang her. Well, they ended up hanging both of them. And Josiah, I guess he was happy in the afterlife. He moved right on. She didn't. And she haunts the beautiful Elko County Courthouse, and people who work there will tell you, she haunts it because she was hanged only about, the original courthouse was about a block from this one. And where they hanged her was a lot between both of them. So she does. But another reason, if you study ghosts or anything, why are they haunting? If you disturb a ghost, a final resting place, you might have a ghost. And her final resting place was disturbed and the bodies were removed. They had them buried near the cemetery, right outside the cemetery, And 10 years later, they said no, move. They hired a man to go in there and move the bodies. And here is a spot in Elko, supposedly, where they buried them. We haven't got up there to do any investigation, but I think she does haunt that area because she's angry at her body being moved and at being dispatched the way she was. But I'll tell you this, she holds a record in our state. She's the only woman to have been executed in Nevada all these years. And you know, women have got the death penalty here a couple of times. Priscilla Ford got the death penalty, and she died of old age complications, 30 years later? So, yeah. Now, here is another one where legends and stories and things kind of... George Wingfield, at one point, this is George Wingfield, was the most wealthy man in all of Nevada. He was the mover and shaker, the power maker. He was it. He had more money than God, and if you wanted anything done, you had to go through him. But when he came into Tonopah in 1897, 98, right around there, 99, he was a ranch hand. I think he might have 2 quarters or something. He didn't have any money. He liked to gamble. And he fell in love with a prostitute there, May Barrick. And so while he was gambling and trying to make a living, she was supporting him. Okay, that's the story so far. Now, at the Goldfield Hotel, which is the #1 place, ghost hunters, they all want to get, everybody wants to get inside the Goldfield, and they want to go to room 109 where Elizabeth's ghost is, because Elizabeth was mistreated by George. George chained her to the radiator until she gave birth, and then he killed her and the child. That's one story. The other story has George killing her and the baby and throwing them down the mining shaft. And she's in room 109, still there, still crying, still trying to get even with George. And he's there too. You can smell cigar smoke in there. Bill and I have spent a lot of time in this place in Gold Hill Hotel, and it is creepy. At daytime, you look at it and you say, it's just an old building. At nighttime, the whole aura of that building changes, and it does. It becomes very weird. I always say, most of the time, a ghost, you can say, well, maybe it's a ghost more than it's a ghost. This place, no, this place is definitely haunted. I've been touched. I was doing a seance with some friends up here, the 3rd floor, and it was a hot summer day. I go downstairs. They're trying to get contact with a child, and I say, that's not a child. I don't know what that is, but it's not a child. I go down to the main floor to get a Coke. I'm at the cooler getting my Coke, and something snatched my leg. And I say, I know you're not a child. I don't know what you are, but I know you're not a child. And we've had our hair pulled. So I do know, people say, And anybody know who Zach Bagans is? Okay, well, he got his start here. We knew him. Well, I knew him, helped him get in here. So, yes, and the brick that was thrown, that was true. People say, oh, that was phony. No, it wasn't. This place is weird. This place is definitely a strange place. So, anyway, we have Elizabeth in 109, the ghost of Elizabeth. In present time, they still say she's there. But in 1906, I'm lousy with dates, George is having an affair with May Barrick, and it's long-lasting. And she's supporting him because he's a gambler. He's not making any money. And then he makes a smart move, and we know the rest of the story. Mining, gold, silver, all of a sudden, he's a very, very wealthy man. But guess what, Mayberrick? George is a wealthy man now. He wants to live the lifestyle. He doesn't want to be with a prostitute. So he dumps her, goes to San Francisco, and marries the daughter of a wealthy businessman and brings her back to Goldfield. Well, anybody here can say how they would feel if they were Mayberrick. You would be very angry. And Mayberrick was. So she decides, I'm not taking this standing still. I'm going to sue him. I'm taking him to court. And she took him to court and accused him of every crime you can think of. She accused him of it. But the problem was, he was a very wealthy man. And men ruled the state. And he had friends in high places. She didn't have a chance. She lost. He didn't have, she says, well, I was his common law wife. I supported him. She didn't have to give him a nickel. I mean, he didn't have to give her a nickel. There was no Judge Judy there saying, wait a minute here now. No. So I say, that ghost that everybody says is Elizabeth is Mayberrick. And she's in that room and she's very angry. I've had a lot of people argue that with me. But I don't believe the Elizabeth story, even though she's probably, if you said, who's the most famous ghost in all of Nevada? She'd probably be right up there. Maybe what, 1 second? She'd be right up there. But I don't believe that's true. Now, if you're interested in Mayberrick, the Nevada Historical Society in Reno has all the court records and all the documentation on what she accused him of. And interestingly, he owned the Riverside Bank, and interestingly, he figured into a few crimes in Reno over the years, so he wasn't a real nice guy at all. And yeah, he does haunt that. I believe he does haunt that place. I believe people say, I ran into a man in there with a cigar. I believe it. Now, I'll tell you somebody else I believe who's in there is some ghost hunters. You know the show, so you'll know who I'm talking about, Mark and Debbie Constantino. I believe they're in there too, because the last one I did with Zach returned to Goldfield. Okay, I believe Mark was in there. I believe Mark had come to get forgiveness from Zach. And I tried to tell Zach that, and he said, I don't want to talk about him on camera. Okay, I won't talk about him. But when we get up on the 3rd floor and we very clearly get his voice, and I say, you know, that's Mark. And I say, can I say it? Okay, so I say Mark, it was very clearly Mark. So yeah, that would be, if you ask me, I believe that's one of the top places in Nevada that's haunted. And you can go in there now. A few years ago when our friend was caretaker, you just couldn't get in there unless she liked to. But now they have a new person in charge, and I think it's going to cost, what, $200? It's not cheap. I mean, you don't want to see a ghost. You're going to pay to see a ghost. Okay, now, Benjamin Siegel, a.k.a. Bugsy. Now, this is something Las Vegas should be proud of, and we should too, our whole state. How many states and cities do you know has a monument to a gangster killer? But we do. Bugsy Siegel. And the reason we have that is he truly was the father of Las Vegas. He truly did have the foresight to see, man, this place, I mean, he might have seen into the future. I don't know, but he knew it was going to go places. He went to the El Rancho and they had the cowboy attire and, you know, the Wild West. And he said, no, we want something more classy. We want green and turquoise sinks and toilets. So that's what he put in the Flamingo. The problem with Bugsy is he was kind of a lousy businessman. So he had the building. He had talked his boss, send me out to Las Vegas and I'll have a big, beautiful hotel built for you. And they did send him out there. He did. He had a girlfriend, Virginia Hill, and one of them or somebody was ripping the big bosses off. They said that they would drive through the gate and they'd say, we need a couple $100. We've got a load of stuff here, lumber and equipment and tools. Okay, pay it. They'd drive right on around the block, come back in the gate and say, we need $200. We got, and that he lost a lot of money for them. Well, you don't do that with the mob. And he was living at the Flamingo, and they're going to open it up. What was it, December 26, 27? They're going to open it up, and the money's going to flow in. And they opened it. All these people were excited to come up here, and they were gambling. The problem was the hotel wasn't complete. When they got tired, there was no place for them to go and sleep. So they left, and the bosses lost their butts a lot of money. They put a hit out on him. He didn't know that. He thought he's still in good with the mob. So his girlfriend is going to Paris. He's going to visit her house, stay at her house in Beverly Hills, and while she's in Paris. And that might have worked if they hadn't had a hit on him, and here comes two men up to the window. Here's Bugsy opening his newspaper, ready to see what's happening in the world, and they shot and killed him. Now, we might say that's displaced. He was dispatched away from the hotel, but he came back, and his ghost has been seen there almost every night since he was murdered. Now, first I'm going to show you, this was at the Historical Society down there. And if you ever want to say, I wish if something could speak or talk, this was a chandelier that hung in Bugsy's room. So you just imagine. But Bugsy's ghost, rumored, he's in the garden, he's by his monument. People have seen him lots of times. He's in the area where the old penthouse, before they tore it down, he was in the penthouse. Okay? But you gotta say, I'm glad Bugsy's back. Could it be somebody else? This is when you research, could it be somebody else? Well, it could be Adrian Grodnick, because Adrian Grodnick and his wife came and stayed in the penthouse, Bugsy's room, 6 years after Bugsy was killed. And they said he stayed in the magnificent $35 a day penthouse. Think about that, $35 a day, magnificent. Okay, well, for some reason, and nobody's ever explained it, he killed his wife, and then, he was young, he was 21, 20. He kills his wife and then himself. And they're in the penthouse. So I say, that ghost could just as easily be Adrian Grodnick as it is Bugsy. I mean, I like to think it's Bugsy. That's pretty cool. Casino has Bugsy wandering around, but it's possible it's not at all. Now, because October 31st is actually our official Nevada Day, tell you about the governor's mansion. And yeah, you know this. We should be proud about this. It doesn't matter what party our governor represents, whatever party he belongs to, he or she will pass out candy there on Halloween night. I think that's pretty cool. It is. It's something to be proud of. And they decorate the mansion cute every year for Halloween. We haven't gone yet and got a picture of it. We always go every year and get a picture of it. And I think that's a pretty fun thing for our state. And it's haunted by, if I can move this, okay, Denver Dickerson was the first governor, and I put the young pictures up. I thought, I'll put the young pictures that's nice. I mean, if it works for Cher and all, why can't we do it for Denver Dickerson? So I put some cute pictures up. He was the first governor to live in the governor's mansion because we became a state in 1864, and I don't think the governor's mansion was completed or didn't even think about we need a mansion until, 1906, I think. So that's several governors who didn't get to live in there. He and his wife, Una, were the first governor and first lady to live in there. And baby June was the first child, and to this day is the first child to be born in there, in the governor's mansion. Now, she grew up, Una she worked for the state. He died fairly young, but baby June grew up and became a grandmother and everything, so she had a nice long life, and Una did too. But the story is that they haunt the mansion, and we've talked to caretakers down there who claim this is true. They haunt that mansion and they're younger, of course, her and June, maybe 6, 7 years old. So I don't know, can ghosts say, I'm coming back at this age, or I'm coming back at that age? I don't know, but they do. They haunt that. They're said to haunt it. I don't know. Did you ever ask him, like any of the governors you knew? Did you ask them if there were ghosts?
We were in there and talked to them about that. That's when I started hearing your book.
Did they admit it?
Yes. Remember the clock?
Did they admit the ghost?
Yes.
That there's ghosts there?
Well, they said.
Okay, they probably didn't. But yeah, there's a clock there too that's haunted. And the story is that it came from England, and a ghost hitchhiked, which that's what they do sometime. They hitchhiked over in the clock, and the caretaker told us lots of stories about that. And then, now this one is a weird one, the Washoe Club in Virginia City. This is one of Zach's favorite places, and all ghost hunters, if they want to go to the gold field, they also want to go to here. Nobody's ever said who the ghost is, what his or her name is, but man, it's haunted. It's haunted. It's the mothership of hauntings. And anytime you want to know what's going on with ghosts in Virginia City, it's probably going on right there up in the top floor up there, which they call the ballroom. It never was. They didn't have any balls up there. There was no dances. No, there was none of that up there. But they call it the ballroom, and that's sometimes when people want to talk about ghosts or explore hauntings and they want to ghost hunt, they just skip right on through the real history and decide it should have been a ballroom. So that's what they've got going on up there. And it's more like a place. We say places can be haunted. We might not know who the ghost is, but the place is famous. It's, the Goldfield and the Washoe Club, probably the two of the most famous haunted places in all of Nevada. And for our last one, I don't have to explain Elvis and Wayne Newton, do I? Okay, there's Are You Lonesome Tonight, Elvis, and Donkashay, that Wayne Newton isn't a ghost. And this story, I think, Elvis still haunts Las Vegas, but things move so fast in Las Vegas. There's most people who see, if they see his ghost, won't even know, well, there was this man. Yeah, I don't know who it was. I mean, we know who he was. People of a certain age know who he was. Most people, they've forgotten or don't remember. But Wayne Newton, and he wrote this in the name of that autobiography, and he's written a couple of autobiographies. This was an early autobiography, claims that he was doing a show in one of the big showrooms down there, and he happened to look out in the audience, and he saw Elvis sitting out in the audience and smiling at him. Well, the problem is Elvis had been dead a couple of years. So Wayne Newton said it, I believe it. I mean, they were friends, and why wouldn't he? I believe it. So that concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions about? Somebody must have a question somewhere. Oh, he does. Okay.
Did you ever work with Ed and Lorraine Warren or meet them?
No.
No.
Did you?
No.
Okay. No. He asked, does everybody know who Ed and Lorraine Warren are? Or were, excuse me. They were demonologists, or he was a demonologist, and they had a Raggedy Ann doll that they said was very haunted. Now this is, I'm a ghost hunter, but I'm also a skeptic if you tell me something I'm going to say. Yeah, they had this Raggedy Ann doll, Annabelle, and they put it in a glass case because it was so evil. Come on now. If it was so evil, why didn't it break the damn case and come right out? I mean, come on. I mean, that's, but yeah, I heard they were very nice people. I never worked with them.
Why did that guy in Goldfield kill Elizabeth?
He didn't.
Oh, he didn't.
No, that was a story. I think they took the true story of how dirty he had done May Barrick and just kind of, they really embellished it. But does everybody remember I Want to Live, the Susan Hayward? Does anybody remember that movie? Barbara Graham, she was executed in California in San Quentin, I think one of the 4th or 5th. She worked as a prostitute in Goldfield too, early in her career before she went down to Burbank and got involved in that killing. Any other questions? No? Oh,
How did you get into all this? Like, how does one just become a ghost hunter person? Not that I'm interested.
okay, I was going to, are you asking me something?
I'm good.
Well, my grandmothers tell my sister and I ghost stories, and like I say, I'm a historian, and I think when you're looking for ghosts or when you're doing that, you're also walking right along history because you're the building, who built it, why, who haunts it, why, what was their life like, how did they become a ghost, how did they die, that kind of thing. It's just a curious thing, and like I said, I've spent, I gotta say this right, Bill won't like it, I spent 3 separate nights at Alcatraz in my ghost hunting thing. And I didn't commit any crimes to get there. It had been closed since the 60s. But as a historian, they invite, oh, you want to come Alcatraz? And okay, sure I do. Also, as a ghost hunter, do you want to come? So yeah, that was like, double jackpot or something. So it's just curiosity. It was something the other night. These are experiences that you have when you're a ghost hunter. A couple of weeks ago, we were in the prison, the old prison in Carson City. 4 of us, Bill and me and 2 of our friends, and we did a seance in there. And it's pouring rain, and he's pulling a wheelbarrow with my big crystal ball. And I asked him, did you ever think you'd be pulling a wheelbarrow with a crystal ball in a pouring rain at the Nevada State Prison? No, he didn't. But I mean, it was fun. And we did a seance, and it was kind of eerie too, because we heard footsteps. Really, that I was really scared. That's one of the few times I could say I've been scared. But to be in places where history took place, it's almost like you can be in many different times. You're in the past with the ghost and what went on in this building, and you're in the present because obviously you're living in the present. And if you're writing about it, talking about it, you're also reaching out to the future. So it's just curiosity, more or less.
Are you a psychic medium then?
I think everybody's sensitive. I think everybody in this room could go in certain place and pick up certain things and stuff. I believe we're all sensitive because I believe that before we had language, before mankind developed language, we communicated telepathically. And I believe that that's still there. We don't use it now. We communicate verbally and the written word, but I believe it's possible for all of us. Are you? Yeah. Well, she says she's not. A lot of people say they're not, but then you might have a hunch or something like that. I mean, I believe. Are you the psychic medium? No. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? No.
Do people that claim to see ghosts try to take pictures of them?
Yeah, and yes, they do. Why? Did
I mean, have you seen any pictures that you think are?
I do. I've taken them. I took one at the Queen Anne in San Francisco. What you should do if you're curious about that, if you think you see a ghost, take 3 shots. 1, 2, 3. And then compare them. And if there's something in all 3 of them that doesn't make sense, it may be something. I mean, yeah. Yeah, don't just take 1 and say, look, that's something weird. Take 3. Okay, anybody else? Okay, guys. Oh,
Could you just answer me a question on spirit boxes? Do you feel they're safe or dangerous?
okay, I feel she's asking about a spirit box, and it's an piece of equipment that you communicate with the dead, and you ask questions, and it answers you. If you're lucky, it will answer you. And I just had this argument with a friend. I absolutely believe it's safe. I wanted to bring my crystal ball to an event. I didn't want to do a seance. I just thought, my crystal ball's cute. It will add to the aura in this room. She said, no, we don't want to be doing any seances. That is kind of, to me it's silly, because if your spirit box, if you're recording, if you're saying, would anybody like to speak to me? If you're taking photos, you're asking the same question. Something come to me. So I believe it's safe. Do you?
Well, I don't know. I watch a lot of these holy and some say be very careful using the spirit box. You can be opening things up or allowing things to hang around. And believe me, I have enough hanging around.
Well, she's right. Nobody wants any weird things hanging around, that's for sure. But what you do, when I do something like that, I say, look, I don't want you belong somewhere else. You do not belong in my environment. And I also do something else that my husband doesn't like. But I always say, if you follow me home and you weren't already dead, you would die of boredom. So that's a good one. A paranormal group in Fallon. I had a friend who lived here a long time ago, and she left. I'm not sure. Carson City, Reno. Maybe you should start one. I'm serious. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's a fun social thing. You meet people. You have the same interest. You do a lot of things besides ghost hunting together. Start one. Let me know. Okay, guys. Thank you so much.